don't miss anyone and we can make sure that folks are coming in. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Friday. My name is Tiara Labrada, Policy Director for the Supportive Housing Network of New York. If you are here for the Best Practices in Rent Collection NetWorkshop, you are in the right place. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone seems to be doing this very well already, but as you come in, please make sure that you are muted. We would like to, as much as possible, mitigate and eliminate any background noise, especially during the presentation. This presentation is being
You're freezing, Tira.
recorded. No, I know, I'm freezing. How is it now?
You're good.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that, folks. It's the weather outside is frightful and my internet is afraid. Okay, so your best practice for rent collection webinar, you're here. We really appreciate everybody joining us today. Again, please make sure that you remain muted. There is going to be ample time. We are in this webinar until noon. There's going to be ample time for you to ask questions off mic or put your questions in the chat. We will be, like I mentioned, recording this, and then we will be posting the recording along with the guide, which you should have already received in the registration, and our presenters slides as well. I want to give a special shout out to Jonathan Castro, Senior Director at Jericho Project, Kenesha Lawrence, Manager of Building Operations at Jericho, and Kenya Evans Pinkney, Chief Program Officer at Jericho Project. They are going to be presenting for us. So we have the guide that the network put together that's essentially a framework for you to utilize and some best practices for you to utilize in your rent collection process. But we're going to hear from Jericho Project on how they implement their practices and the way that they've been successful in collecting rent arrears. So how we're going to do this, I'm going to just really briefly run through the networks guide just so you can see it, get familiar. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because you have the guide, it's accessible to you, and I want you to read it through on your own. If you have already, that's great. But really, I want you to hear from your colleagues from Jericho to talk about how they have actually been implementing some of these best practices in their own in real time and their success rate and challenges. So we want to leave ample opportunity for that. And then also for folks to share on this webinar things that you've been doing that have been successful or things that you've been doing that have been challenging. So there will be plenty of opportunity, like I mentioned, for that to happen. You can put your questions in the chat and we will answer them along the way. But we will also be, allowing you guys to come off mute and ask your questions and have them answered after the presentation. How does that sound? Good? Great. Very much looking forward to this. I am going to share my screen and pull up our rent collection best practice guide. Bear with me. All right, can everyone see my screen with the presentation?
Yes.
And I can't, okay, great, thanks. I need someone to come off mute and say that. All right, so like I mentioned, this is the guide that the network put together with the help of all of you, our members, our colleagues, who came to us a couple of years ago and was having a lot of challenges, especially during the height of the COVID pandemic, and there were a lot of rent freezes and a lot of challenges with collecting rent. I'm not going to uh, do a whole soliloquy about how challenging it is to do rent collection and supportive housing, because we all know that the challenges your tenants are facing and that we're all facing as a whole. Prices are going up, incomes are staying stagnant, folks are on fixed income, folks are actively using, folks have health conditions and other priorities that may prevent them from being able to maintain gainful employment. or just face challenges in managing their budget overall. So we really wanted to put something together that can help you all, knowing that you all are doing great work already. You're doing the best that you can do. But if there was something that we can provide that acted as sort of a framework for you, that's really what we wanted, really why we put this guide together. So again, like I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You can read through the guide on your own, but I wanted to just walk through it very briefly. Can I even? Okay, great. So like I just mentioned, we know that effective rent collection is essential. Your buildings are underwritten with the expectation that your tenants are going to pay 30% of their income in rent. That's just the nature of the game. And we also know that in order for you to operate your buildings effectively, you need to have that income, that your buildings are reliant on that for maintenance and operations. And infrastructure updates and all of the things. This guide, and we know that there's oftentimes a bifurcation between property management and case management, and this guide actually assumes that that is the case for the most part. And then we dive right in. So there are several sort of overarching themes here, but the primary one is that the most effective method for rent collection is making sure that you're establishing trust and transparent communication with your tenants, right? So building those relationships, establishing trust, making sure that folks know from the onset, rent collection doesn't happen when arrears begin. The process and idea and the encouragement of rent payment happens, at move-in, at lease signing. So making sure that your tenants know when rents are due, the amount that rents are due, what the methods for rent collection are, making sure that you're sending reminders and making sure that there is, consistent, transparent, and clear communication. Another is encouraging multiple rent payment options. So some of you I know are using online rent payment portals, and that could be helpful, but are you making sure that your tenants have access to online rent payment mechanisms, right? So do they have a bank account or some sort of online payment portal where they could use? Are you setting them up on your payment portal site with an email address and making sure that they understand how to use it? If you are using money orders, making sure that you're showing them how to do that and where they can get money orders either from the post office or the check cashing place or how to do that. Writing checks, which is a lost art form, honestly. I still do it, but not a lot of people do. But if they're writing checks, making sure that folks, understand and remember how to fill those things out. Another thing that I would love for folks to talk about in the chat and when you come off mute, when we open it up for questions, is offering incentives. So we hear that this is highly effective. It may vary from population to population, but offering different types of incentives for folks to encourage timely rent payment. This is something I know Jericho is going to talk about, but would love to hear your ideas and how you guys are offering up incentives in your rent payment, rent collection options. Budgeting. So we know that this is highly important, not for just supportive housing tenants, but everyone writ large. And one of the things that we wanted to highlight here is that the budgeting process should not be happening with the property management. You as case managers, for the most of you are case managers, presumably, but even if you're not, like the budgeting process should begin with your case management, and you should have clearly established a budget and a payment timeline that is reasonable and feasible for the tenant before going to the property management. You don't want to have those negotiations with the property management. Case management and property management should be discussing this together. Again, building trust. Building trust, that's one of the most important things. If folks are not willing to communicate with you about challenges that they're facing with their income, or whatever challenges they're facing, then it's going to be difficult, one, for you to establish that budget before property management gets involved, or to recognize that there is the potential for arrears to begin. So making sure that you're, as much as possible, like actively engaging with folks, building that mutual trust, providing a safe space for folks to come to, and also working through from a harm reduction approach. So we understand the challenges folks faced, whether it's active use, substance use, whatever it is, but coming from a harm reduction approach, not a paternal or judgmental approach, like you must do this before you do this. But if there are folks who you know that maybe are using their limited income so they can use, like how can you incorporate that into their budget to then develop a feasible, reasonable payment plan so that they don't fall behind. I think that is one of the most important approaches as well. And I know that that's something that Jericho is going to talk about. Guidance and assistance. So again, showing folks how to properly complete any type of rent payment method that is available to them. So making sure that folks have easy access to instructions, that you're walking folks through, that you're being patient and taking the time. If there are local financial institutions around, like a local credit union that folks can get connected to, and I know I used to work for a credit union. But for folks who have been like historically unbanked, there are options to get people banked that could sort of go around like the typical banking documentation that's required, et cetera, et cetera. So building relationships with your local credit unions could be great in helping folks so that they're not necessarily needing to go to the check cashing place all the time. And then they get the resources that are available as part of being a credit union member potentially, which is like free financial counseling. Sometimes they have like credit building loans, secured loans, like those sorts of things. You can maybe have someone from your local credit union come to your program and talk about, financial management and budgeting. And we know with folks on limited income, that might not be the thing that's at the forefront, but there are so many resources available in local credit unions that help folks who are who are on fixed income or limited income maximize their resources. And we have some links here. There's a typo here, don't worry about that. But there are some links here that you can access. Monitoring and evaluation. So making sure you're tracking payments. Again, I know that a lot of you are already doing this, but do you have a consistent payment tracking mechanism that you're using, whether it's Excel or your payment portal? Are you using an automated system to send reminders? Are you sending text messages? Are you printing rent payment notices and posting them up online? Are you seeking feedback from your tenants about the payment portals and their ease of use and user friendliness? Are you developing systems for tenants to give feedback that may be anonymous? So actively seeking ways to improve your rent collection processes, I think is really something that is going to be beneficial. So not doing something just because you've always done it, but making sure you're staying up to date, and getting feedback, and then as much as possible adjusting your rent collection methods to respond to the needs of your tenants instead of sort of sticking with the old ways because that's just the way that we've been doing things. Rent payee, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's very nuanced. It's a case-by-case basis, but it is an option that's available for some that has been utilized. So representative payee can be designated to help a tenant or help a person manage their finances, which includes ensuring that their rent is paid and other like household requirements are being met before giving folks the rest of their funds. Um, Outside of New York City, it would be sort of your local DSS that's sort of managing this process. Inside New York City, it's HRA. You can read through this. There's some links here to help to provide some additional resources, but again, it's very nuanced. It's on a case-by-case basis. There might be some challenges with that, but we do know that folks have utilized this as a last resort and as a short-term intervention to get folks back on track. So this is not something that we are recommending as a long-term strategy as a case manager or property manager, as a supportive housing provider, but it could be utilized short-term to get folks back on track on a case-by-case basis as a last resort. Internal coordination. What does the coordination between your property management and your case management look like? One of the recommendations that we have here is to designate a specific staff member, uh, someone on your team who is the designated rent liaison officer who can sort of manage and mitigate the rent payment process, right? So it's like, this is someone I can go to. I know if I have a question about this, this is the person that I go to. If they're not available, then there's someone next in line. We don't recommend only one person being the guru for one thing, but designate a person or two who folks can go to. Is like, this is the person who can answer my questions, who I feel comfortable talking to, and having some consistency in that communication could be really helpful. And then again, making sure that case management and property management are communicating with each other. Here are some resources that are available for everyone, all tenants in New York State. So working with OTDA, the VA, Catholic Charities, which is broad. It's not just New York City focused. This is available for all. And then here are some resources that are available specifically for folks living in New York City. Again, you can read through this guide on your own. And it's posted on our website, and Ashanti's going to put a link in the chat for you. But share your comments, thoughts, additional resources that you have. We can always update this. This is a living document that's being highly responsive to our community. So if there are additional resources here, or additional resources that you don't see on here, or additional avenues that or approaches that you've taken, please feel free to let us know. We can update this and yeah, continue to share it around. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to spotlight myself. And I am going to ask for Jonathan Castro, Kanisha, and Kenya to come on. And I will pass it off to you guys.
Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yep, we can hear you
Okay.
and see your screen.
We
Yes.
can hear you.
Great. So before we get a few housekeeping things, one is there are some things just because of time, I want to make sure that we get through all of this and leave enough room at the end for us to talk about some of the concerns or thoughts that you guys have. And also I want to point out that this is not by any means a holy grail of what you should do to get to your arrears down. We're going to talk about what works for us. In my portfolio, I have the lowest arrears and I also have one of the highest arrears, right? And so we're always constantly thinking about how can we improve on certain things to make this work. So we're going to show some of those trials and tribulations and successes with you guys. And so throughout this process, please share thoughts, questions. Kenya's going to chime in throughout the process as well. And she's also going to let me know if there's any questions that are there. Some of them we may leave to the end just because of timing, but I just want to put that out there. We'll get to everyone's question. So my name is Jonathan Castro. I'm the Senior Director for Jericho Project. I oversee Jericho Project's 3 veteran supportive housing programs, as well as their young adult program. We're about to have the second one open soon. And also I'm part of the horticultural therapy here at Jericho as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kanisha Lawrence. I'm the property manager at one of the Jericho veterans locations.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kenya Evans Pinkney, and I am the Chief Program Officer here at Jericho Project.
So at my location, I house veterans. I have 56 units. Currently, as of September 2024, our contract rent is $2,259. All of my units are project-based vouchers. In a perfect world, we've collected over 126,000, with 110 being subsidy and 15 plus the tenant portion. In December, we've collected over 120,000 in monthly rent, and I have about 5,668 in arrears. I have a few tenants who are kind of, those tenants that have issues paying, whether it's, something I've heard like, oh, there's a game coming out, I can't pay my rent this month, there's some sneakers. I have a couple loan sharks in the building. Some of you MBOs know the stories of the crazy stories you have heard from your tenants that we love so much. A lot of them suffer from, substance issues, drugs, things like that. So those are the stories that I've been told since I've been in my position, or the reasons why they can't particularly pay their monthly rent.
So one of my other buildings, Walton House, we serve 89 residents, 33 of them are young adults under the age of 26. We get funding through the UHMH for the 1515 category. And then we also have 56 veterans that we get HUD VASH subsidies for. We don't have any program dollars for this, so this is primarily the money we get from them is directly from rent. So as we're talking about kind of the things that we've experienced, some of you may have this option. So for DOHMH, we have a contingency line. Um, it is money that can be flexibly used when it's directly related to homelessness prevention. And so you can be creative how you use it. Some agencies may choose to use it for arrears. We'll talk about some of the issues with that. But you can use it to rehab an apartment to keep the person there, maybe who's hoarding. You can, if someone's is schizophrenic and the son of water makes them feel calm, so they constantly use water, but the water overflows and makes damage to your apartment. We can also use it for that because outside of that, technically, you would start a holdover case, right? So that money you can use to keep that tenant in the apartment to prevent homelessness. So one thing that I implemented was this application. So we do use or we did use contingency for arrears, and what we found was that the young adults in particular, they didn't know what it was, right? They're not looking at the budgets, but they knew sometime around August they would get their rent ledger and magically some of their arrears would be gone. And so they didn't know why, they didn't know how. And so for them, they're like, if I could just hold off long enough, I can get the arrears paid off. And so what I decided to do is create this application, which made it a little more formal. They didn't know this, but technically, whether or not they did this application, they were still going to get the funds because we cannot, it has to be distributed equitably, which means everyone, if we use it for one person's arrears, we have to use it for everyone's arrears. But I wanted to make this as structured as possible. And I also got this cleared through our project manager at DOHMH, who I have a really good relationship with, and that does help. We'll talk about that as well. But this application allows the tenant to work with their case manager to talk about budgeting, to talk about what has been some of their struggles about not paying rent, right? It makes them have to kind of take accountability for that piece. The next part, they then take that document and go to the property manager, or what we call an MBO, manager of building operations. And they have to talk to them about the last time they paid rent. And again, have that same conversation, right? Of like, why aren't you paying rent? What's going on? The MBO then signs. Then the final step is going to the program director, in which they then talk about these questions here. As you can see, it says the agreement to pay July's rent. The contingency typically gets applied in July and August. That's why it says July. But we asked them, what is your plan, right? If you do get selected for this opportunity, what's your plan to continue paying the rent? And then we kind of spice it up. We say it's easier than applying for a one-shot deal. You're gonna, it may not pay for all your arrears, but it's a big chunk of it, right? So we try to entice them so they know that it is something that they should really work towards obtaining. Unfortunately, not all arrears can be taken care of. And so when it comes to eviction, and this is not just evictions for arrears, this could be a holdover. We have also created a document which the program director kind of takes the lead on, but it's supposed to be worked with everyone on the team. And this just allows for the chiefs, senior management to know what's going on with the program. It also allows for us to troubleshoot any issues that we foresee happening when it comes to the actual eviction, whether it's DOHMH letting us know that they want to audit our files because we've evicted 3 people in the last year and they think that's pretty high. Newsflash, if you get DOHMH funding, they will start asking you for documentation proving that you've done everything you could to keep the person housed. So if you haven't evicted anybody recently, just know that that is happening. So this document, again, is something else you could provide as a step in the process to mitigate evictions. So again, this is the next part of it. This is the bottom part of the application. And again, as someone who I work with regularly, I'm connecting with the property manager to ask them, hey, did we do everything? Did we ask this? Like I'm asking her, did we try everything, right? How many times have you tried doing a payment plan?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And here, So for me, the steps that I use to try to negate the arrears, just speaking and engaging with my tenants on a one-on-one and having clear expectations on their behalf, letting them know like, hey, this is where we are. I know for us, we have a $500 dollar amount rule and a 2 month over. So if you're over your arrears for 2 months, that's an issue. So I'm coming to my tenants and I'm speaking to them on, trying to get them to clear the arrears. So engaging with them, setting clear expectations. Once I do that, I also send out rent demand letters every month, letting them know like, hey, this is where we are. I try to foresee the tenants that have, start off within 200, start creeping up to that 500 before it gets to the point of the 500 mark, so that they know, you need to start making those choices, whether you're going to pay the money out of your pocket, or, reaching out to HRA for assistance.
So just doing a check because we can't see anybody's faces or hear anybody. Is everybody hearing us clearly? Is the visuals okay?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, visuals are
Yes.
clear. We can see you.
Yep.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
So the way
Yes,
that
we can.
All right.
thank you. So some of the ways that Jericho is combating arrears. We have clinical magic, which we'll talk about in a second, incentives, teamwork, property management software, and standardizing procedures. So what the heck is clinical magic? So clinical magic is harm reduction, client-centered, affirming, knowledgeable, uniquely tailored, authentic, ethical, relatable engagement. And you do not need to be a therapist to do clinical magic. The front desk staff, the porter, the building manager, everyone can do this. It's not just connected to a case manager or a social worker or a therapist. And again, this is how your tenants are seen as a person and not just as a number, not just as a paycheck, right? They need to know that you care about them and that you're reaching out to them for more than just, hey, you're late on your rent. This is how you start to build the process to getting your arrears taken care of. So we have an incentive program at Walton. And again, we'll talk about, funding. I know that every program or every region has this, but we were the first 15 young adult program. And so they gave us a lot of wiggle room to kind of advocate and kind of present kind of innovative ways to work with young adults. And so they allowed us to carve out some money to do an incentive program. And so originally it was set to kind of encourage them to go back to school, get a job. And what we explained to DOHMH is that we need the ability to expand this so that we can try to get them to be much more sufficient and well-rounded adults, right? A lot of these young adults came in, and even though they were 21, 22, they were functioning at like a 13-year-old level, right? They didn't have the support needed to kind of function at a mature level like that. So this program allows us to do that. And so let's say someone wants to become a doctor, right? We can incentivize parts of that while still getting them to that big goal. So we have to explain to them that you cannot be a doctor in 3 months, right? So what is the first thing you can do? Maybe you get a GED, or maybe you have a high school diploma. Maybe you want to go and enroll into the community college, right? So we break down those steps so that we say, okay, if you enroll in, if you apply to BMCC, we'll give you $50. If you get in, we'll get you $100. If you enroll in classes, we'll give you another $100. If you get your first A, we'll give you $200, right? And so we start to incentivize the process for which what is going to get them to their goal. Same thing applies for rent, right? If you pay rent on time or in full by the end of the month, 3 months of rent contribution, if their rent contribution is, let's say, $150, that's almost a free bet them to pay their rent. Based on our contract, every young adult can get up to $600 a quarter. So that's $2,400 a year. It's non-tax. You don't have to put in taxes, so it doesn't affect their income. And so it's essentially a stipend. So this is how that clinical magic works, right? So you engage with the tenant, you goal set, the clinical magic happens, right? You're encouraging them You're reminding them that these were their goals, right? These are their words. You're not pushing anything on them. They achieve the goal, they get payment. It's not just for rent, for everything that we do with them when it comes to the young adults and all our staff, even the veteran. I mean, even all of our tenants, even the veterans. This is what really allows us to really engage with them and get us to the results that we are looking for. But again, what about the money, right? So a lot of organizations, a lot of programs um are really strapped for cash, right? They're doing the they can only do the bare minimum with the money they're getting. So you have to be kind of creative and think about different buy-in from your agency, right? You need to have these conversations with program directors, senior leadership, chiefs, the CEO, right? Everyone has to be at the table to talk about how are you going to put this topic right now? We're talking about arrears, but any topic at the forefront, right? Whether it's overdosing, whatever it is, how do we put the topic that we're talking about in the forefront? Look at the existing budgets. Maybe there's something that you can move around that would help you do that. And we'll talk about, I'll give you a great example of that in a second. Donations, small grants can help, be creative. And so Kanisha is actually going to talk about something we implemented as well.
Yes, it's an idea that I wanted to steal from my program. I think it's a great idea. I do have, like I said, a few tenants that don't necessarily pay their rent on time and have arrears. So I think having some type of incentive to help them get through that goal, I think it's a great thing. So good job. Kudos to you on that one. So
Thank you.
yes. What was that? So, case management, what is the completing assessments? I'm lost.
So yeah, so you can get the Walton Bucks based on several things. So usually they're really around things that we know we get dinged on an audit if we don't get done. So unit inspections, paying your rent on time, participation in groups. And so I stopped sharing my camera because I'm hoping that that helps with the connection. Some people were saying that it was choppy, so I want to make sure that folks can hear this. So again, these are like little vouchers that we give out that they can then cash in at our store. So this is the Walton shop. You can get clothing, detergent, towels, toiletries, cleaning supplies. Then we have some donations, like somebody give us a coffee maker. So then we'll put that like at $60. And so people can kind of earn money to buy those things. And a lot of budgets already have this in there, right? You're already buying toiletries. So you're just inside. Some of the feminine hygiene products here, I do not charge bucks for. Anybody who needs them can get them. I also do not incentivize pantry. Because that's just a personal philosophy I have about incentivizing food. But everything else here is up for grabs in terms of the Walton Bucks.
So relationships matter, meaning working with clinical and your tenants, working together to, for the greater good of your building, your program is very important. So I rely on my program director and the clinical team all the time, trying to, engage with some of the tenants that may be difficult and, whether it's arrears or other things. So coming together as a collective just helps, you know, navigate everyone, to do a better job. It's like, so communication, again, relying on your team. We're here 8 hours. We're here at work more than we're with our family. So you kind of build that bond with your team, your program director, your clinical team. So that way, again, to benefit the tenants. That's all, that's what we're here for our tenants and making sure that we're servicing them and giving them the proper support that they need.
Yeah,
Can I
so a
chime in
lot of
for a minute as well? I'm
yes.
sorry. So I just wanted to make it a point that we are very intentional about the collaboration, right? We have monthly meetings to discuss rental arrears, clinical, and the operations teams, which are the MBOs. They attend all of those meetings once a month. We go through each and every person that has the rental arrears, and that in that meeting, we are discussing all of the interventions that clinical did. Whether that was applying for the one-shot deal or APS referrals or payee, whatever that is, and the steps that the operation team has taken, whether it's going to the legal department, whether it's on a payment plan. We're just trying to be clear about who's doing what. And again, the communication is key. So that's why we are taking those meeting minutes, and everybody is sharing, even up to the chiefs, what those meetings are entailing.
Yes, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But that's actually a great lead into the next thing here is the property management software, which Keisha will also talk about.
So this is our management app that we use, and it allows us to track payments. It allows the tenants to set up monthly payments every month. We do know that our tenants do have some vices, so this helps us tremendously. If you want to engage in whatever it is that you're trying to do, at least you know that your rent will be paid. You have some stability there. So your rent is, being paid on the days that you want it to be allocated. It also tracks the payments. Soon as the payment goes through, it gets processed. I get an email stating that the tenant has paid, portion or the full amount of their rent. It just keeps an easier track for us, and the tenants to know that, there is something to help them keep on track with their monthly payments.
Yeah, even with the subsidy as well. If they're not following up with the recertification, if they lose the subsidy, right? If they want to see what that damage looks like, they'll see that, right? Sometimes we have, and I'm sure people in this call can relate. There's people who won't follow through. They'll get the letter in the mail saying, "Hey, you need to do your recertification for your Section 8, or you need to go to HRA, or you need to do whatever." And then they think everything's good, and then the rent ledger will show them that no, you didn't recertify with HRA, they didn't pay your rent, right? You didn't do your thing with Section 8, they put a pause. So it also makes it real for them to see it themselves. So standardizing procedures. So I'm really, 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 really big on standardizing everything. I think, while every program does things a little different because of the population they serve, I think that having the same bones does help the agency kind of thrive. And so, one of the things that I want to make sure that people know is that we have consistent and planned structured meetings with property management / operations, clinical and program staff. So that's what Kenny was talking about before. They happen once a month at the end. We call them income meetings. So we'll talk about that as well. Free documents that or use reports that give you the information that you need. Centralizes information, and accountability for everyone is a must, right? So just like we're demanding accountability for the tenant to pay the rent, then we also need to have accountability for the case manager to follow through on that, right? To apply for the one-shot deal, for the property managers to make sure the ledgers are out, that they're clear, that they're understandable. And so some of these things that we've done is, it starts before moving. When we're doing the interviews for the apartments, we're telling them, hey, how have you paid, do you have any history paying rent, right? Have you ever paid rent before? Have you ever lived on your own before? We have a program that, auto debits the account, your bank account to pay rent. Do you have a bank account? No? Oh, and over the next 3 months while you're waiting to move in, maybe you should work on getting a bank account, right? So that they're doing those things even before they come into the building. Our progress notes has a section where you can specify rent, rent conversations, right? So that I, as a senior director, I can pull up those notes that shows me that the work is being done, right? When DOHMH wants to know what we have done, I can easily just pull up those notes because there's a tagline in there that allows me to search for those types of notes. I have a spreadsheet that I created that I sent to all of my program directors and all of my case managers that allows them to write the amounts of each of the tenants that they owe and what's being done to get them. Has conversations happen? Has engagement happen? Has service plans happen? Have they applied for one-shot deal? What's the outcome of the one-shot deal, right? So that spreadsheet tells me what I need to know so that when we go into the income review meeting, we're all on the same page, right? That nobody's asking each other kind of with blank faces, well, what happens to John Smith, right? We all kind of know before we go into these meetings what's going on. The property management software allows us to capture this information as well, right? So Kenisha's boss can also look and see what what's going on, even if she's not at those meetings. We also have a case conference that happens on the program level that includes the case managers, and that's a space where they can talk about the struggles that the tenants are having. It's not just about arrears, it's about everything. But that's when we can start thinking about, okay, it looks like arrears is not a priority for them. However, we do need to have them pay rent. What can we do to support them, right? What services can be put in place to get them out of the situation they're in, right? So these are all the things that happen on a kind of regular basis. And then that is it. That's our contact information. Obviously you'll get a version of this sent to you guys after the training, but I would like to open it up to questions.
Well, we have some questions in the chat. I don't know, Kenya, if you wanted to sort of facilitate that process.
Yeah, I've been answering them as they've been putting them in. If I missed anyone, you can come off mute and say your question, but I think I'm pretty good with all of the questions that were in the chat.
All right, so folks, if you have questions or comments or other thoughts, please feel free to go ahead and come off. I'm going to remove the spotlight just so we can see each other here a little bit better.
And
Yeah,
also,
so we
if
will.
so say if you want to share your camera when you ask your question, I would love. I mean, you don't have to; it's not a must, but it makes it real for us because I feel like I'm looking at a wall.
Yeah. So if you want to come off and share your name, title, organization, that would be fantastic, and then ask your question.
I do see here Adrian Rivera said, oh, what about clients who owe $40,000 or more? Do you want to talk about your your person there?
That process takes a while. Obviously, the legal lawyers, it's a whole process in trying to get someone to relinquish or evict. In this case, I do have a tenant that owes about 39,000. I've been kind of dealing with this situation for about 3 years now. So keep hope alive. It's gonna happen. Um, but it's definitely, reaching out to the legal department and working close with them and your supervisor to try to get a positive outcome. Hopefully that person is willing to relinquish the unit. At that point at 40,000, they're not going to make good on that payment.
Right.
HRAs, it's nearly impossible. So you want to work closely with your supervisor and hopefully that they can relinquish that apartment and get those monies off of your rental arrears. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that we have tenants who flat out tell us they're not going to pay.
That part.
Oh, you're not going to evict us. You're not going to pay. I'm a vet, so nobody's going to put them in the street. It's all about documentation. You need to
Crazy.
document these things. There's a different, like, you can tell me until you're blue in the face that that's what they said, right? If it didn't document it, it didn't happen. And DOHMH doesn't care if you give them the sob story. They need to know in real time that you asked them on January 2024 that same question. They said no. You offered them again the application in April. They said no. They did something over the summer again. They said no. Like, you need to show the pattern, so that when it gets to the point of eviction, you know that you've done everything. And again, it's great if your staff knows and you know narratively, but if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Yeah. Also, if that helps, certifying the mail, the leasing documents that you would send to them if they were cooperating and they were complying, send that to them, via USPS, have it certified. So that's also some form of documentation that you can have when it's time to go to court. Yeah, so those are the things that I do, having to get those monies paid.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
And my question is, I understand y'all broke down certain things about how you're dealing with clients with the arrears built up. All right. My question is, clients have a tendency of using the one-shot deal, like once a year, to pay their rent. But it ran across a couple of times when tenants use it so much that they now become, when you go to HRA to try to get it, that issue is dead. So do you have an avenue or some kind of answer to help them with that problem? Because when you abuse the one-shot deal, what's the next stop to go from there?
So, one thing that has helped for me is that, information spreads like a virus, right? Good and bad. So we've had tenants who never paid rent, and because the length of the process has been so actually, let me give you a better example. So, right before 2020, we had somebody who owed about $15,000 in rent. They refused to pay. The pandemic happened. There was a stay on evictions, and then the ERAP situation happened. So he kind of got a lifeline that was all paid for. And so he was going around saying, "Look, I told you I owe this much." He showed all the paperwork. They're never going to evict you. So then people stopped paying rent, right? And that was one of my bigger programs. And then what happened was people started getting evicted because they weren't paying rent. And so that information, just like the information of them not paying rent and nothing happening to them spread, we had to make sure the other side spread. So we would talk about it in meetings, and I would ask, hey, are people having issues paying rent? And letting the tenants kind of like share their own stories and share that, right? So having people say, look, I actually exhausted my one-shot deal and now I'm looking for something else, like, HIPAA, you don't want to share that information, but let them do it. That can then have an effect of like, oh my God, wait, you can not you can be declined for that, and letting them realize that this is not a guaranteed thing, right? That there's rules around that they can come back for that money at any time, right? A lot of people don't know that. So kind of empowering them with information so that they can make better decisions.
Excuse me, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
Getting back to mailing certified mail, I recently found something better. Well, for my reasons, it's cheaper. It's called certificate of mailing. If you go to the post office, they give you this little slip you fill out and you get back a receipt. What the problem I had was with the certified, the client didn't sign it, so it gets returned to the post office. So that didn't help me in proving that I sent him something. So the certificate of mail, I asked at the post office, that's what they told me. And it's mailed, that you have your certificate that it was mailed. Client could say he never got it, but you have proof that you sent it. So that's just a good resource for other people that need to send something so you have something documented.
Is it free?
Oh, no,
No,
but it's
a
much
small
cheaper.
cost.
No, it's
Okay.
much cheaper. It's $2.73. It just went up. It was $2.20.
Okay. So under $3. Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
called certificate of mailing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
And I think
You're
Richard was
welcome.
going to say something. Richard? He's out of space right now.
Oh yeah, it's me. Yeah. So I just want to know like, how you would approach some clients, because we've had clients come into our office and they have basically said that they're going to refuse to pay the money back from the one-shot deal, which is something that we may encounter more often. So I'm just wondering how you guys would approach dealing with that, because like we had one client come in, I think her payment was like $200 something a month, and she said that was too expensive. So we just want to know.
I wish.
Yeah. It's about being transparent with what is the consequences of their actions. You can't really force anybody to do anything. But they need to know that they can technically garnish their wages, they can freeze their assets, right? But the reality is a lot of our tenants don't have any of that stuff. So they don't see it. They're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna seize my BMW that I don't have, right? So you have to kind of like be real with them and be honest, but also meet them where they're at, right? And if they're saying $200 is too much for them, that's usually typically based on their income, right? Unless you have a different type of situation about how they get rent. But if it's based on that, they have some kind of income that created that limit. So find out, hey, is it about moving that money around, right? Is your money going somewhere else? Can we take the money straight up from the beginning, right? If they use drugs, can we take the money at the beginning of the month so the rest of the money you have is play money? So yeah, Tiara, do you want to say anything? Well,
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I'm
sorry,
just
Tiara.
curious. I'm curious if folks have encountered a scenario where HRA is actively attempting to recoup money from the one-shot deal. Yes, you have? Okay. Okay.
Angelina?
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I was asking, we had worked with HRA a couple of years ago when there was, the crisis, the crisis of rent arrears has been ongoing. But it had reached a sort of breaking point when there was an article in the New York Times and the Gothamist regarding supportive housing providers actively taking tenants to eviction court, housing court, to deal, to evict them. So then we started talking with HRA, trying to expedite some of the one-shot deals. And they told us, well, we don't actively attempt to recoup this money, but I can't verify that. So I was just curious if folks have seen them actively attempting to recoup the money from supportive housing tenants specifically. So I see there's there, yeah. So I guess it can really, it's on a case by case
And
basis whether or not they do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. My name is
um,
Saez. How
Hold
do you
on.
feel
Lizette
with
has
the
a,
ones that throw at you that, oh, we have squatters rights? Like, it's like they telling you they're not paying, period, that they planning to claim squatter rights.
yeah. So on that note, that's when you document and you move towards a holdover to recuperate the apartment. And these are the sadder situations, right? The idea here is that the person is wants to live in the apartment, right? They want to work with you. But unfortunately, and I'll give you another true story. Right after the pandemic, once they started allowing the evictions to go through, we had a gentleman that my team and I loved. He's awesome. He's a great guy. He had recently tested. He recently was diagnosed with cancer. He was going through a lot, but he refused to pay rent. He's like whatever, I'm done. I don't want to pay rent. He ended up going through the eviction process. He 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 was evicted, and that same day he went to the court, paid his rent, and came back, was like terrified, like, yo, I didn't think y'all guys were really gonna go through with this. And we said, yeah, we were. And it pained me because he's such a great guy. He's all right, and he has never missed a payment again. And that was 2, 3 years ago. And so sometimes they have to like experience that to realize that you're about that word.
Seriously.
And again, that message spread through the building.
Okay.
Because they were like, yo, they really are evicting people. Like, John was lying. They really are coming for people. So you got to make sure that you kind of stick to your word and follow through. And it sucks, but if you document everything, you'll be okay in the long run. But it's really about trying to get them to see that you mean business, but with a empathetic hand. It's a fine line.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I don't want to be Banga. I don't want to butcher your name. So please do introduce yourself when you talk. You're muted if you're talking. Ibanga Usoro. All right, we'll come back to you. I think there was Angela or somebody wanted to speak. Anybody? Kevin, are you trying to speak? Can everyone hear you?
I see a couple more questions in the chat. Go ahead. Oh, Kanetta, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to come off
Yes, I
mute?
have a question. I did put it in the chat, but I think we missed it. I used to work for somebody here, I think is from ICL, and I used to work for their supportive housing. So I'm familiar with the agency itself that provides supportive housing is being the representative payee. And I'm wondering if anyone here has experience with that, because it's something that we'd like to implement. I just know it's a process, and if we could connect offline to figure out how to go about doing that, because I think it would be easier than going through APS. Because when folks have APS as their representative payee, there's often delays in receiving their checks via mail. And that presents an issue because they're constantly calling us, calling the APS worker, like, where's the rest of my money? So if it was something that we could do internally, once the checks are cut for rent, we just issue them their remaining balance. So I'm just wondering if anyone here has that going for them in their programs.
So Jericho does not do payees, but I know there's a lot of organizations that do. I think actually Kenya has some experience with that from the past.
Okay.
I do. And it's a process just like with an individual, you have to go through the process for the organization to become a payee. But again, the tenant is going to need to agree. So I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
There is some resistance there. So I'm not for sure that the organization becoming a payee is going to fix that particular problem. But the tenants have to agree to have any sort of payee.
No, I understand that. And the folks that do have APS as their paid currently do express like frustration. So I'm just saying, like, maybe we can transition, and maybe, eventually convince other folks. I do understand that they have to make that choice. But
Yeah, and
would I
it's
be able to reach out to you via email to
fun.
ask about that?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to piggyback off of Kenya. This is Kimberly from TSI, Supported Housing Program Director. And we actually have a few tenants that we are the rep payee for. We, as Kenya said, they do have to agree to it. We receive their check at the beginning of the month, and the tenants get their payment by the 15th of the month. At that time, we already take out their rent and whatever other utilities that we need to pay for them, and they get the balance of their check. And they're able to budget it until the 15th of the next month. So that's been working for us. And we actually have a financial specialist that is our liaison with Social Security. So for the different levels of housing, we have that person that's able to go and support the resident.
Kevin, could you put yourself on mute?
So yeah,
Thanks.
you call at the end. Was there a question? Or we just finishing up there? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
Oh, no, I didn't ask a question. I was just finishing up, just saying that
Okay.
my
You just
agency
go ahead.
uses the rep
Awesome.
financial department.
All right, thank you so
Where are
much,
you
Kimberly,
from
for
as
that.
well? What agency are you working for?
I work for Transitional Services for New York, TSI NY.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then Kanisha's gonna. There's a question in the chat that that Kanisha's gonna talk about. So we wrote, does Jericho actually help pay rent like HRA with the one-shot deal?
So for us, clinical's team, they assist with the applying of the one-shot deal. We've had case managers take tenants to the actual office to, start the process. For those who don't like the online portion of it, we do have some older tenants that kind of like to go in person. But the clinical team does assist with online and taking them. And if they happen to be denied, we do have a sister program, SSVF, that also assists with having the rental arrears paid, but that would have to happen once we receive a denial letter from HRA. I hope that answers your question.
Mr. C. Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question for Kimberly, and it in regards to pay statement you made. When you say we, are you talking about as the agency we, or is it like a member of staff? The agency as in property management?
Are you referring to me?
No, Kimberly.
Kimberly.
She made a statement about we serve as a PAE sometimes.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
You made a statement that. Go ahead, Jonathan.
No, he's referring to the payee. When you say the word we, are you saying we as the agency is the payee, or we as
Yes.
the
When I
person?
said
So a case manager becomes the payee.
Okay, so when I said we, I meant TSI NY became the client's rep payee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that is not property management, that's the agency itself, right?
Yes, it's the agency itself.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's another point actually that reminded me, every agency works differently. So here at Jericho, our property management is connected to the agency. Some people have they work with external entities. Some people have kind of like a duality where it's one agency, but it's two two different independent companies working under one agency. And so, if you don't know that structure or kind of have familiarity with that, you should ask around, talk about, what is it that you have, and start there. Like know your program inside and out, and understand where everybody kind of falls in the flow chart of support and hierarchy. It does help with how do you communicate with people. Avi, Mayan, again, if I'm mispronouncing anybody's name, please introduce yourselves. I don't want to butcher anybody's name.
Hi, I'm Avi. I just wanted to share some things. I'm not a case manager anymore. I work at VOA, but I was a case manager a couple months ago, and I learned a couple things from the program director of the Dykeman HRA that I think would be helpful. He shared with me that people who receive income in terms of their working can apply for a one-shot deal and they will have to pay it back. They will send like a 1 year repayment plan, but if you go in and say that that's not attainable for whatever reason and write a hardship letter, they will make it 2 years. If you have a client who is under public assistance, or if you have a client who is under public assistance, they do not qualify for a one-shot deal. They qualify for emergency rental assistance, which is not ERAP. When you scroll down, you can apply for it. It's a different thing. And all you have to do for that is show a breakdown and show that HRA missed rent payments. If you go in person, they can pay it back within the day, and it's pretty fast. You just kind of have to talk to the right person. If anyone has sites near Dykeman HRA, you can email me and I can send you my contact there. He's really helpful. So he does that. And then if you have Social Security income, and you are eligible for a one-shot deal, or Social Security disability, any kind of Social Security income. You are eligible for a one-shot deal if they ask you to pay it back. You can go to them and show that you have a fixed income on Social Security and they will waive that repayment. So only people who really have to pay back one-shot deals are people who have an income. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Adrian?
Adrian Rivera. If you're speaking, you're muted.
He's not speaking. He had walked out with the client. I apologize. We're in the office
Oh,
together.
that's okay. It's
So
okay.
I'll go while he's waiting. If I could.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I was we have like a complex situation here in my organization because we came in a lot of new fresh faces, but from the old management, things are like catastrophic at the moment. We have some tenants and clients who are in arrears of $40,000 plus, and who are I've called APS. APS has came. I work in congregate care. I'm the population mostly here is NY2, and this is congregate care housing. And like I stated, the clients are very ambivalent towards paying rent. They feel like they've been doing this for 10 years. Why do they have to change now? We've called APS. APS has come out and they were trying to find every excuse under the book to not service the clients until they got to the door and they're like, "Oh, you have roaches coming out your house. You have rats coming out your house." And it's like, "Sir, we need help." We're trying to get the client some help. They were saying that, "Oh, this is a shelter and they can't help in the shelter," but congregate care is not a shelter. This is their home. So I was just trying to figure, is there something specific or that we can go about doing as far as bumping it up to get the eviction process rolling?
Yeah. So again, documenting all those efforts, and I'm gonna go back to having those meetings internally with your agents. recently we had someone who was going to be evicted who was over the age of 70, and we just found out that in order for that to happen, APS needs to be involved. And we never had somebody over the age of 70 who was going to be evicted. And so we learned that process ourselves, right? So like we disseminated that information to folks. When it comes to APS, yeah, they're not. We had somebody who we tried. He was making $200,000 a year. He was a contract for the military. He quit his job so he could qualify for the building. Then once he got in, he got the job back. We tried getting APS because he would like soil himself. He had a lot of other mental health, physical health stuff that was going on. But APS wouldn't take the case. They said we're supportive housing. We have services on site. They don't need to take it. So we had to kind of explain to them that their services are not mandatory. They're not conditional to their housing. Like we had to like really write this all out and send in an email and ask them to come back. And so it's really about like sticking on them, trying to create a connection with somebody there, having, sometimes it's not about you as a case manager or even as a program director speaking to somebody, is about tapping in your CPO and having them speak to somebody, right? Sometimes it's about name dropping. So really work with your agency and the folks, again, is about that buy-in, right? Getting your agency to say, you know what, if we're going to take this seriously, then everyone has to come to the table and come with solutions. Kenya's really good at that. I have constantly asked her to step up and talk for me, and talk to somebody. I'll send them an email, whatever. She'll do that, and they'll respond. Right? We can be saying the same exact thing, but because her title is Chief Program Officer, they'll take that with more severity than a senior director. And so, those types of things are really crucial for the agency to thrive. Is that everyone has to come to the table.
Thank you so much.
Carmen?
Yes. Hi, good morning. So my boss, she actually had a question that she had placed in the chat, and it was one of the challenges that her portfolio has, and it's regarding city steps renewals. So one of the biggest challenges is that we provide with the wrap units the entire packet, and they're not being processed. And maybe we can figure out what type of strategy, if anybody in this room today may have a strategy or someone else. It would be so grateful to have some type of feedback on how do other agencies deal with these types of challenges when it comes down to HRA, city subs renewals being processed, because 9 times out of 10, a lot of them are not being processed. And me as one of the staff members, I find myself having to take them downtown personally to upload them into their account. So is there like an easier way? Because I've actually been stopped by HRA and told, they actually had told me I'm not allowed to do that.
So I have a little bit of experience with HRA. I used to run a DV shelter for Jewish board, and I had a lot of city FEPS folks that were getting apartments, and they are extremely slow with processing their recertifications. So what the DV section of the HRA program was doing was we were talking to the higher ups over at HRA, because this was a thing for all of the providers, not just me as a domestic violence provider, right? So, and somebody mute.
Sorry, I'm gonna try to mute them.
Thanks.
There you go. Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you. So my suggestion to you is strategize. A large amount of voices is more effective than one, right? I would try to talk to your counterparts and see if you can strategize and getting people to have a meeting with the HRA representatives, because they are slow. They have been this way for quite some time, and people's housing are in jeopardy because they're failing to do these recertifications on time. So I would strategize and get your voice heard. Over the HRA for sure.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Let me see the chat. We're kind of going around.
Stephanie has her hand up.
Oh, Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm from PCMH, the asset director of asset management. I just wanted to, I'm going to follow up with Avi because she put in her contact information, and we also have a benefits person that we hire specifically just to help them with their one-shot deals and things like that. And she has come across those situations where they we'll get a response, and they will be like on Social Security, SSI, even PA tenants, where they're told that they have to return the funds, they'll be garnished. And so then they stop the application. They won't want to continue the application. So I just want clarification for someone that might know that that is for sure going to not apply to those tenants, so that I can kind of just in the midst of the conversation say that you can ignore that. We can give the hardship letter, and then that won't apply to you.
So it's not something anyone can guarantee on this call. And if they do not trust them. Policies change. However, the baseline policy has been you cannot retrieve something from someone you cannot retrieve funds from someone who doesn't have any, right? It's like if I sue you for $2 trillion, you don't have $2 trillion, I can't sue you for that, right? I have to sue you for within the means of your of what you can pay. Same thing with HRA. They can come back. And I think the limit is 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. So like if for the next 5 years they're living on SSI, they can't retrieve that money back, right? There's no way to do that. But if they hit the lotto within that time and their social security number pops up on their radar as someone who owes money, they can recoup that money. So the general consensus is that if you stay within your means, which you have now, they probably won't come back for you. But if you start making money, buying a house, doing those things, they can liquidate your assets.
So it could happen in the future.
Yes. And again, any administration comes in, they can change anything, right? They can say, yeah, go after grandma. It's fine, right? They can change that. But as of right now, that sounds so messed up. But as of right now, it's really about your assets.
Okay.
And so they're really going after folks who have something they can liquidate.
All right. Thank you.
Diane?
So I have a question where if because I read in the comments that those that are on SSI can get a one-shot deal. I was told that they can't. So can they get a one-shot deal? Social Security?
Yes, they can. They can.
Oh, they can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think there's like a policy on one side or the other where if you are on SSI, it's either SSI or SSDI. It's one of those where you are actually entitled to some rent arrear payment. Like you can get a rent arrear payment every month without going every year. But yes, on SSI and or SSDI, you can get the one-shot deal. To another question in the chat about it only being once every 12 months, the answer is yes. I can't promise this. And again, things can change all the time, but I'm just curious if it sounds like folks would be interested in maybe an HRA NetWorkshop on one-shot deals. And I can't promise this, but we can definitely check in with them about it.
That would really, really be great. Just for clarification.
Yeah. And it does sound like it's really up to the person that you connect with, who's processing the application. But we can certainly look into it. And I don't know if my team is still on, but maybe making a note to touch base with HRA if we're thinking through NetWorkshop ideas. As I anticipated, a very lively discussion. Please feel free. We have 10 more minutes left.
I'm sorry, my name is Brittany Ramos. I'm from Beacon of Hope House, the supportive housing program with Catholic Charities. I think the HRA workshop would be very beneficial. We have our benefit entitlement specialist as well, who comes to our sites, and he has been assisting our clients with processing these one-shot deals. But they have also gotten that letter back indicating that they have a payment plan and they need to agree to it. And a lot of our clients just get very hesitant, and then they say that they don't want to sign the agreement because it's either too much for them or they don't want to owe HRA, but then they're also then they'll say they'll do the payment plan with us, and then we don't ever see them making those payments. So we're kind of stuck between them not doing the payment plan with HRA and then not doing the payment plan with us. So I think if we had a little bit more information about HRA's process and if the repayment is actually required for some individuals, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so that's the issue that I go through with
Yeah.
my tenant. So that would work.
Yep, copy that. Yes, this is being recorded. We will circulate the recording along with the guide and the slides from Jericho. Not immediately after this, but most likely Tuesday or Wednesday. As some of you may know, the network is hosting a state lobby day on Monday. Some of you may already be registered for that, but we will be in Albany, the entire team. So, and it takes a little while to download this to download the recording. So we'll download the recording, compile all of the things, put them all in a package, and send them around to everyone who registered. And then this will also be posted on our website.
Diane Harden had a hand up.
Go ahead. No, yeah, okay. Yeah, we have a few more minutes, so folks, feel free to share any final thoughts.
I did get
Thank you.
a little birdie from Jericho Project also just messaged me and told us to talk about also we have a benefits department as well. That really helps try to get people SSI and entitlements as well. We have a whole department dedicated to getting people employment as well, gainful employment. So there aside from us talking, we talk a lot about one-shot deals and stuff. We also want to talk about how do we prevent us even getting to that place where we need a one-shot deal, right? So really try to think about what is your agency doing to try to mitigate that, right?
No other questions, anyone? Any comments?
Well, I just want to thank our friends at Jericho for not only helping to polish the guide, but agreeing to share their practices and data and information and putting together this presentation for you all. Really sincerely appreciate Jonathan, Kanisha, Kenya. Thank you so much. I want to thank all of the folks who shared insight and information that helped put the guide together, CUCS, Breaking Ground. All of you, whether you knew it or not, helped us to develop the best practices guide. I want to thank all of you for being so enthusiastic, coming in, sharing your thoughts, sharing your ideas, putting your questions in the chat. It really makes the webinar fruitful, and you're here with your colleagues and your peers, thinking through some very challenging things. And you're not alone in this, right? This is an issue that is proliferated throughout the state. So I really appreciate everybody joining on a Friday morning. Like I mentioned before, everything is going to be circulated next week. Next week, things will be circulated when we get back from Albany, okay? So thank you for your patience in advance. You can find the guide online already on our website. Ashanti, if you're still on, if you could just drop that in the chat real quick before folks start hopping off. But you can find the guide already online, but the webinar and the other slides will be posted. My friends at Jericho, any final thoughts before we go?
Oh, I mean, I wish we had more time. I was going to start singing, but we need time for that.
Oh, no, sorry. Shoot. Oh man, we gotta go. Ashanti, end it. Thanks. Shout out to Ashanti on our team who manages all of our NetWorkshops on the
Yes,
back
shout out to
end. Really
Ashanti.
appreciate you.
Thank you all
Shout out
so
to you,
much.
Tiara, for putting things together.
Me?
You definitely
Not
had
a
this ready to
me.
go.
Hey,
Yeah,
I do it for
you.
y'all. I do it for y'all. No thanks necessary. Your attendance, your participation, your questions, your engagement, all of that is thanks enough. Thank you, sir. All right, everybody, go forth, go have lunch, eat, hydrate.